looked at me like he hated me. You guys, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the book launch party for I Touched Everyone in My Dreams. I'm gonna be speaking a little bit about the book and then doing a little reading. I'll be up here for probably like 30-ish minutes, give or take, and then if anybody didn't get a book afterwards or want something signed, we can do that after. So,
and totally fine if you have to leave. We know some people have to leave.
Do whatever you need to do. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. So, first and foremost, I really want to say a big thank you to Jonathan Adler for having me. Todd and Sam, thank you so much. Their generosity was so appreciated. We came in here, that's actually mine and Jeff's couch that you're sitting on right there. And great quality, very sexy piece. We get a lot of compliments on it when people come over. What a great couch. And it's from Jonathan Adler, and we got the matching coffee table, which was also really amazing. So I do love the pieces here. They have a lot of great knickknacks and just great quality furniture that can really work in any context, in my opinion. So, so thank you there. And now, I want to say a really big thank you just to all of you for actually coming today. It means so much to me, seeing every single person here. The fact that I have people who will show up for me regardless of whatever artistic endeavor I'm doing is so important and just so appreciated. I also know how precious a Sunday afternoon is, so the fact that you chose to spend yours with me really means a lot, so thank you. Thinking about my next point, actually. Can you go get me my notes from the back? Thank you. I think where I was going to start was that I Touched Everyone in My Dreams, this poetry book. It was sort of this silly, oh no, that's not where I was going to start, sorry. Where I was going to start was, this is an important day for me because it's the first thing I put out into the world as a writer. And many of you know I was in school for fashion design for 4 years in Italy. And then I graduated, and for some reason it just wasn't fully clicking after I graduated, and I did feel pretty called to express myself in other ways. And Jeff was managing writers at the time, and I was thinking, oh my god, that would be so much easier to build a world with just writing, computer and some typing skills rather than pattern maker, seamstresses, financiers. I was like, oh, I want to try that. So ever since then, I've been writing novels, screenplays, short stories, short films, and now a poetry book. This book was really special for me because it was something that I could put together in a matter of months, not years. Writing, especially anything long form, takes a long time. It's very solitary, and you're alone with your work, and most days you kind of hate it. So it's really special to have something that I could put out. It's a collection. The earliest one was written when I was 14 about my first boyfriend, whose mother is actually here today. Shout out Charlie. And Beautiful Affliction, stand by it, great poem. But anyway, that was the first one, and then I wrote these throughout my teen years, through college, and through the time of publishing, so they really do encapsulate my life as a young woman, greatly inspired by my late grandmother, Suzanne Summers. She came out with a poetry book that I have right here, and I checked the date, and this was published in 1973. She happened to have been my exact age, 27, and what a lot of people don't know about this poetry book is that it actually was the catalyst for her iconic career and all of her stardom. She was in the NBC commissary one day after an audition, and she saw Johnny Carson. For those of you who don't know who that is, that was the modern day Jimmy Fallon. And so she went up to him. She was a nobody at the time, and she went up to him and she said, oh, I have this poetry book. I'd love to give you a copy. She gave him a copy. He had her on his show, and he was so charmed by her that he had her as a recurring guest. She was ready to quit acting at the time. She had done so many auditions and nothing was clicking. And it was from those Johnny Carson guest appearances that that the casting director, who was looking for the coveted role of Chrissy Snow on Three's Company, said, "I have the girl." And from then on, she became the Suzanne Summers that America and much of the world grew to know and love. But before that, she was just a single mom writing love poems to fall asleep. So this is a really special moment, and definitely feel her with me. Oh, I knew I would cry at this point. So just give me a second, okay? But what really, the poetry book is called Touch Me. And what really touched me about these poems is that they were so vulnerable, and she wasn't trying to be anything besides just authentic and real and true to herself. And that's something that I carry with me and that I try to certainly embody in my book of poems. My book is called I Touched Everyone in My Dreams, which was sort of this kind of silly, like, came from a dream where I touched everyone, crazy. Everyone loved it. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure, hopefully, a lot of us have had those types of dreams. Hopefully I'm not the only one. But anyway, this sort of silly dream that this phrase that came from this silly dream sort of started ruminating in the back of my mind, and I was like, this is actually touching on something that I really believe in. Dreams are these, nebulous, matterless sort of experiences that we go through. And there are images that shift one into another in colors and people and objects, and you can really touch anyone or anything in a dream. And that realm is the same place that I pull from when I'm creating anything. When I'm writing poetry, when I'm painting, when I'm doing anything creative. It's like, where does creativity come from? I believe that sort of realm is the same place we'll probably go after we die. So I touched everyone in my dreams was a phrase that, though it started from this silly dream, it's actually touching on the fact that we might not all be as separate as we think we are. So that was the impetus for the title, and then the book is curated in this sort of gentle flow where all the poems kind of loosely flow into each other, but they're not under some, strict theme or anything. I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, I illustrated the book too, so it was a cool way to merge two art forms that are important to me, art and poetry. I have poetry about romance, about heartbreak, about traveling, about existence, about just sort of humorous aspects of life. So hopefully there's a little something for everyone. There's a wide variety, I'd say, of different types of poems. I'm gonna do a reading. I'm gonna read 3 poems and a haiku, so I did include that for you guys. I included that haiku. Yes. Before I read, I just want to say a quick word on poetry, because a lot of people, when I told them I was writing a poetry book, said, I don't really understand poetry. And what I have to say back, and some of those people are in this room even, what I have to say back, namely Jeffrey Chibatari. Sorry to out you like that. But anyway, what I have to say to that is that no one understands poetry. And you're not alone. Some people are just maybe a little bit more comfortable not understanding things than other people. For those of us who are more analytical, sometimes we want answers. And in a world right now that's so black and white, talk about a time when our country is so divided, the world is so divided, there's sort of this encouragement to be on one side or the other, and it creates this very us or them mentality, which in my opinion does not create peace, but only creates war. Poetry teaches us to see complexity, to see layers to situations, to accept the things we can't understand, to create our own interpretations. We also live in a very productive society, a society that really thrives on efficiency, and being productive is very important, because if we weren't productive, we wouldn't get anything done. I certainly wouldn't want a poet as a doctor, but at the same time, becoming distracted has become this mortal sin. And it's in moments of distraction that I have found some of my greatest, artistic creativity, my greatest epiphany. So I'm trying to swing the pendulum a little farther toward poetry, which in these days is somewhat of an act of rebellion. And I quite like that because I'm a little bit rebellious. So here we go. Here's my rebellious reading. first poem I'm going to read is called Internet Silence. And I'm going to be so annoying. I need to stand. I got to use my hands here. Sorry.
You do you.
Here we go. All right. Now we're talking business. Okay. The first poem I'm going to read is called Internet Silence. This is my take on a modern love story, which is somewhat funny to me. Nowadays, we have so many online signals to interpret, and it's become part of the dating game. I see it with my friends and, with myself when I was dating. And I wanted to write this story about somebody who's just completely torturing herself over being obsessed with, a guy, and she's created the whole thing in her mind, and sort of the moment she realizes that that's all just a fantasy. I used a lot of language that was sort of technological and pixelated and nebulous, sort of dreamlike, and then juxtaposing that against very physical, very real imagery, things you could only feel if you were in the same moment with somebody. I also think the sort of online hiding behind a screen can create sort of a coward of a lot of us in my generation, so I was touching on that a bit too. Anyway, this is called Internet Silence, my modern love story. I watched him fade in the last pixel of our dying correspondence, analyze his page and all of his responses. These could be premeditated, secret messages, so I play our current state like a scripted, cinematic exit. Fade to black, the screen reads FIN, but he doesn't know this is the end. We never even began. I was on an island, watching him slide down the last smudge of gold on our dying horizon, desperately reaching behind it as though I could yo-yo the sun and sling our midday ball of hydrogen directly above. But I landed in his dusk, feigning conversation out loud into the open mouth of oblivion. I wasn't there, no. I was in darkness, his world as I imagined it, through a digital projection. Violent and euphoric, unlike the dismal skeleton of his tactile existence. I fell in love with the scum of my mind again. I'll never have him. I'll never have him. Never in the same blended breath or primal stroke of evening flesh, bodies naked, mathematically calibrated, but we'll never be so primitive, and I'll never be so satiated. Instead, he'll shade an uncertain sliver in the gutters of my skull, row the rivers of my dreamscape on his lantern-hung boat, set fire to a propane tank on a slice of unintentional narcissism, my female ego. And my self-involvement explodes, feigning conversation with the confused digits of a direct message question I'll never send. No, it'll be a nonchalant, jaw-dropping photo, side profile, because good men like innuendo, mystery, and good eyes discern profanity. So tell me there's no emotion behind his eyes when he watches my story, because he's intuitive, super creepy, water sun, water rising, one to cool what I'm firing. Yet somehow my flame's afraid of his palm before my face. His palm I could incinerate, but I obsess without the faintest track of my trace. Now he's on red. It's quiet. Resume our love story in internet silence. You never know if it's requited. We're both too private. Thank you. You know what's coming, the haiku. Yeah. So haiku, 575, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. First time I wrote one, I was in a Japanese garden on a field trip. I was in second grade or something, and they gave us those Japanese brush pens, and they were like, write a haiku. I was so in it, so tortured, and I was in this peppermint rose garden, whatever. Anyway, Camelia and I actually went through a phase this year where we spoke to each other exclusively in haiku, and I fear I'm putting her to shame with this one because she was so good. But this is from the Naples Airport. If you've ever been to Italy, there are some common sights you'll see, and I thought this sort of encapsulated that. So Napoli Airport Haiku, you can count with me if you want, 575. Wafts of espresso. Guy in light ripped skin knee jeans, eating cornetto. So now that we've done the haiku, I'm gonna have a little bit of a vibe shift, okay? This next poem is one of the longest it's the longest poem in the book, okay? And this one does need a little bit of context, or else I fear it could sound like jargon, when in actuality it's one of the most intentional things I've ever written. So this poem is called The Bull Upon My Birthing Bed. And it was written at a time when there was a lot going on inside of me personally. We all have, trauma that comes up, things you got to dig up. And then there was also a lot going on outside of me. LA was in flames, and just a lot of changes for our country. And no matter who you voted for, everyone's welcome here. So nothing about that. But there are a lot of questions that people in my generation are asking, a lot of concerns that we have about the next generation of children will have, what their experience will be like in life. I was reading a poem at the time called The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. This is kind of like a smart girl moment of me, because I was really on Rimbaud and Baudelaire and T.S. Eliot, so flex. But anyway, the T.S. Eliot poem, The Wasteland, I didn't understand it at all when I first read it, which apparently is not a unique experience, because that's a very difficult poem. But after some research and reading it a bunch of times, feeling a very strong subconscious connection to this poem, I understood that it was a poem about a post-World War I society in which there were people who had lived through this terrible experience that were alive, but they were surrounded by so much grief that it's almost like they were neither living nor dead. The most famous line of that poem is, "April is the coolest month." And the significance of that line is that April is usually a time full of new beginnings, and flowers are blooming, and life is blossoming. And people living in the bitterness of that post-World War I society could only associate new beginnings with endings and with death. So I happen to have been born in April, so my poem starts, "Is April really so cruel? Is it that bad?" The poem starts, and it starts with these bull's eyes on the horizon. If anyone's ever seen the constellation of Taurus, that's the bull constellation. That's the sign that was on the horizon when I was born, my rising sign, which is a very important, very faded sign. So this bull is sort of a symbol that follows us through the poem. And it ignites us into the personal existential question of, who am I? What is my purpose? As we descend into the madness of the poem, we realize, and we age with the poem, we realize no one can be impervious to the harshness of reality. And we get into the global existential question of, what is my country becoming, and what will the world become? Will the world cease to exist? Which may or may not sound dramatic, but these are the questions that people my age are asking at this point. We have a few motifs in there from The Wasteland. The Hyacinth Girl, which you'll hear, was a reference to the wasteland, but in my own double entendre, the Hyacinth Girl is representative of maidenhood, also of Persephone before she goes to the underworld. Persephone is the dualistic goddess of spring, and then also queen of the underworld. When she's the goddess of spring, she's called Kore, and she's young Kore playing in a field of hyacinths and crocuses, whatever it is. We have a lot of different languages, which I was hoping that I would be able to get away with this, but I actually have Italian speakers, French speakers, and even a German speaker here. So if I mess up, you guys are really going to have to correct me. But we have a few different languages, because that's also something that T.S. Eliot does that I didn't know I could do. Just like throw in another language. I love languages, so that's fun for me. And then we have a lot of different speakers. This poem is meant to evoke a sense of chaos and confusion. We also have the German refrain, "Als das Kind war," which basically just means when the child was a child. We have this Italian man who comes in and out, and the Italian man is basically representative of the ultimate outsider, someone who has nothing to do with America, who's sort of lighting his cigarette on the American inferno, taking the piss out of American politics, which, quite frankly, when I go to other countries, they seem to think America's a joke. So anyway, that's just my experience traveling abroad. Then we have the bull sort of following us into the poem, this notion of the gods playing games. I think sometimes when everything is going haywire outside of oneself and inside of oneself, we think, what's the divine chess game happening, and is this all for a higher purpose? Like, what could be the higher purpose here? So we have Zeus and his son Sarpedon serving as a metaphor of sacrifice. Sarpedon is a very important character in the Iliad, because Sarpedon was Zeus's son, and Zeus's son that he had to sacrifice in order for the Greeks to win the Trojan War. The Greeks had to win the Trojan War. Just a little ancient Greek mythology here. But anyway, Patroclus had to kill Sarpedon so that Hector would kill Patroclus, so that Achilles would kill Hector, so that the Greeks would win the war. But it was a hard time for Zeus because he was like, this is my son. So he went through all this deliberation of, can I get out of this somehow? Like, maybe I can turn my son into a form of divinity. And all the gods were saying, no, this has to happen. So anyway, the gods play games. All of a sudden, Persephone is wanting to go to Hades when usually she only spends 6 months of the year there, kind of against her will. But it's sort of like, why are we living in this weird inferno, this eternal winter, whatever? We get into more American politics blended with the intrinsic existential question, who am I, what's going on in my own life? And then the last piece of context that I'll provide is, the last line of the poem is Guernica and the bull's head that rose upon my birthing bed. For those of you who, many of you probably know, Picasso, one of Picasso's most famous work is Guernica. And Guernica was such an important work because in 1937, the Spanish Republic asked Picasso to create a large-scale painting for the Paris World Fair. At the same time that the request came in, one of the most brutal acts of the Spanish Civil War was committed, which was the bombing of a small Basque town called Guernica. Picasso was so distraught that he created, also because the bombing was carried out by Italian and German fascists at the helm of Spanish nationalists. So you have this country going against itself, this sort of civil war crime. Picasso was so distraught that he created this large composition of bodies and heads and faces, and it's dynamic and heartbreaking and violent, but also beautiful. It's one of the most famous anti-war paintings. When he was standing next to it, a German soldier came up to him and said, "Did you do this?" And he said to the German soldier, "No, you did." And in the corner of that painting, there's this bull's head, and the bull's head is sort of looming there like an entity. Researchers have attributed the bull's head to be representative of the fascist government. In the last line of my poem, Guernica and the bull's head that rose upon my birthing bed, it was sort of the most efficient way to synthesize both the extrinsic and intrinsic existential questions I'm asking. We have this symbol that was so beautiful and so personal to me, that is so brave as we relate it to Guernica in the context of society. So anyway, I also promise I'm not this much of a pessimist on the regular, but I did write this at a time when hope was not my prominent feeling. So anyway, I'm going to take a sip of water, and then this is the bull upon my birthing bed. All right. Is April really so cruel? Those soft eyes of the bull blinked on the horizon with the power of 100 suns on the morning I was born. Aldebaran and Epsilon Tauri to greet young Kore in a field of hyacinths. God has given me this child, Alua Fay to me, a fresh wet slab of glistening terracotta, so soft before it bakes, it takes the form of any shape. Als das Kind war. When the child was a child, she saw abrasions on adults she would never emulate, those lacerated by the talons of reality to which she turned a blind eye pallidly. Life was easier blind. Sometimes she fears she will go blind. She saw darkness veil the eyes of Dionysian dreamers whose fate remained beneath deathless gods back when Persephone bestowed us with the cold, then warmed the other pole. The harvest moons unfold and Primavera danced upon the grass, virgin ankles on uncut grass. You should touch grass, they say. I thought we'd have a picnic today. Cara, dammi una sigaretta e ce l'hai un accendino? Ah, posso accenderla nell'American Inferno, sulla faccia bruta e arancione di quel paese? You want to light your cigarette on the orange face of my country's fate. I thought we'd have a picnic today upon the orange flame that licks my hometown's plate. Yet you light your chiaravalle on this idiotic outrage. How does it feel to be so blasé? How they take, and in their smoke we suffocate, and in their smoke the gods play games. God has given me this child, Alua Fay to me, Sarpedon, but take his lungs out with your weapon as you draw your spear from his ribcage. And shall he ask what he can do for his country while you watch a small Basque town obliterate? Did you do this? No, you did. This is your unreal country, ta saison en enfer. And so we enter hell with grace while the gods play games. How the gods play games. Adita Paryaya Sutta, young Kore of the hyacinths, longs for Hades.
Bickus, all is burning at the funeral pyre. Now the bull sits back to watch as I wait in the fire, bake in the fire, follow my dreams, but the advice of the great American machine has never yielded to me. No paths to fork in an open wood, I walk lost in the shrubs every waking day. Oh generator, see, I'm still semi-soft clay. That girl's tail is so unpinned, I never see her on the ground, only ever in the wind. Now she's an aspiring name on the curriculum, succumbed to scrolling and the tales of life postpartum. I hear the tunes, I hear the tunes. They give me a terrible case of the I'll show yous. So long as flames won't lick this earth upon which my unborn children play, so long as this magma won't gape me beyond my dreamscape, this chalice won't poison my treasured sense of taste. J'ai poison préparé par les anges, des cœurs qui me rongent, quand la belladonna muori in un cuore di bellezza. Once upon a time, I was fresher terracotta. Now the ingenue is laying in her grave. The hyacinth girl is going gray. Since her patina will be cast astray, give her the words carved in permanent stone. Let them shout glory to her name in Luxorian temples. Will they crumble, though? The bottom of the pot signed in apoplectic cursive. Lalique, R, France, 1945. À la dépris, les arts sont fragments. Don't let my soul die, you can't really kill spring. With permanence I'd like to remain, like women who soft with water weight, of supine acquiescence, unofficial transgression, lifetimes and marionette lines of reassigned possession, American succession, red line, Columbine, video games, love of mine, fast food, fast times, suck the straw of the media pipeline, the media pipeline, the media pipeline. Will I be focused again, or chase fame without a plan? A cause to this computer game without a god that I can name, without a message to be sent. Earth ends whimpering again. Madame Sesostris, famous clairvoyante, plucked the devil in my tarot deck. So shall I reveal to you mes sentiments, or shall I be so fake? Shall I feast on beauty while the others die in waste? Shall I sit her on my knees with such a cratered face, or pledge allegiance to this wasteland with undetermined fate? Shall I write the next great novel for the network to outweigh, to be impartial to my name, file away and oversaturate? Forgive me for this ennui, I usually have faith. Now the screen is finger-stained, pupils burned and strained, and I'm really so depressed. So can we kiss again, or let the storm abate? Escape it like the madmen with needles, dread, and rage, who drown themselves in sea glass bottles with a million blurry faces, and wave their hands and kick the cars and lay their tents on the boulevard between Franklin and Vine. Sometimes I fear I will go blind. Sometimes I close my eyes. Als das Kind war. When the child was a child, she tried to shun the houseplants vomiting leaves, the sorrow of rose petals, brown and wilting, the vegetables pulled from earth's damn shrieks, the ants that drown in sinks, the ruptured clams in water boiling, opening for release, the lobsters' clipped claws abducted from the sandy floors of silent seas, the children slain in red pool rooms of purple mountain majesties, the families south on seesaw swings, the rats in this corrupt rat's alley, the seder-spangled loophole cheat, the earth to rise with global heat, the bullseyes, how they widen before the trigger release. Now the worlds of anguish enter, vibrations, words from another language, rivers of an abstract poetry reading, and they exit the skin. All these chemical reactions corrode another edifice. A life well lived. Life well lived. Niente niente carina, non è sempre la bella vita. So the women soft with water wait, and pale men's cheeks suffuse with red. The hyacinth girl has laid to rest. Our abrasions tightly stitch and thread the cloth of red for woven ties that won the freeman's race again. Guernica and the bull's head that rose upon my birthing bed. Thank you. I promise it'll only get easier from there. That's kind of a dense one, but it's sort of something that when you read on the page, you'd probably, not really understand. I know that because I read a lot of poems I don't really understand. So anyway, this next one, not much crazy to say. I think this is about commitment, and I'm somebody who loves to be free, but only through commitment do you really understand true freedom. And sometimes it sounds enticing to just be this free little speck of dust floating in the wind, but when you actually get down to it, if you don't commit to anything in life, at least what I've learned is you don't really experience anything. So anyway, this is called commitment. Cheers to commitment. Cheers to the grief, the uncertainty in making a decision. Cheers to my eternal curiosity about the infinite options I could have picked. Cheers to the worst case, that I chose a purposeless path. To this, I raise a glass. Time will tell, but for now I commit to whatever it is and try not to torture myself for all that could have been, because alternatively, I'm a free spirit galloping through heavy gusts of wind, never making a decision, falling asleep at sunrise, then waking in the night with him, her, and him, eating scraps of food I find, like a cat on the roof, climbing through different windows of homes, staring at the moon in repose, traversing the keys of Debussy's infinity until the depression kicks me and pines for the man I truly love, with whom I refuse to commit, because living in limbo like a stray cat or a scarf in the wind was so much better than a lifetime of loving him. So tell me, how should I live? I am of the ether of the clouds, on earth until my sundown, for the wonders only violet can experience, as my nameless soul is surely floating through wisps of pink and white, burning through the starry night, in the ecstasy of that celestial city, together with all the choices I've discarded, vibrating in the climax of eternity. Thank you so much for coming.